did check in. She's not able to join, and Francis will be a little bit late. He's stuck in traffic, so he'll join as soon as he gets here. Do we have any oral communications? No. And review of the minutes?
Move to approve. There you go. It works.
Yeah. All right, approved 3-0. Thank you. And current business is building for library infrastructure grant project. Hi.
How's everyone? Getting nice and close to the holiday. So I do have an update for you, as we normally do. One of the things that was included in the packet was a timeline, as you requested previously. Once we get past kind of the January timeframe, a lot of it is much more anticipated rather than the actual, or projected rather than the actual timeframe. I am happy to say that tomorrow we are scheduled to receive the 100% construction design packet from the design firm, and that at that time we will also be receiving a really good idea of what the construction costs are going to be. When that happens, that will allow us to determine what type of budget that we will potentially be working with when we go out to bid. We are suspecting at this point that we are going to be over the construction costs for this particular budget. However, we are looking at opportunities to be able to do a little bit of value engineering. So with that, one of the really great things that happened this last time, I think I mentioned to you previously, was that we are able to use cooperative purchasing agreements specifically for our furniture. We also have a vendor that will enable us to do cooperative purchasing for the book stacks as well. And what we're anticipating is not including the cost of the stacks when we go out to bid, and instead using that cooperative purchase agreement. We believe that will save us a significant sum of money to be able to use in these other ways. So when we're looking at kind of that value engineering, if need be. I don't have those specific numbers, obviously, as of yet. For the next meeting, we will have those available for you going forward. Just a kind of a general check as far as everything else. Once we receive those documents, we will go into plan check and review, and then that will be in January, and then hopefully, and then that permitting process will begin in January timeframe as well. Then in February is when we anticipate going out to bid. For that period of time, we will then evaluate those bids roughly in, again, the March timeframe. And then after that, we are expecting to go to City Council for the award of the bid sometime in early April. And that will allow us to actually begin construction in sometime in May. Now, all of this is providing everything goes on schedule. It has been so far, knock on wood, we're very happy about that. We do anticipate everything to continue to go that smoothly going forward. Now, as far as the relocation is concerned, right now we are still working on a number of different scenarios, if you will, and locations for us to be able to move to. Initially, we were looking at kind of a multiple location relocation. However, in having conversation with Reno and his team at LS&S, as well as our internal departments for IS more specifically, that's just not something that we are interested in entertaining. So we would like to keep and consolidate all of the library services in one single location. I do have a couple of meetings next week that will firm up some of those potential locations, and we should be sharing that with you at the actual January meeting. So we will have a much more firm idea of where we're going to be and where we're going to be going in January. And That's my presentation. If you have any questions, feel free.
Yeah, I've got, so basically, if I'm looking at this list, everything is complete down to 12/11, December 11th.
That's correct.
Okay, and what's coming in tomorrow, you've already said is coming in tomorrow.
That's correct.
So how, I'm sure you guys have your prospective bidding pool, you know who you're going to be sending this out to, pretty much?
I am not familiar with the bidding process. It's not my area. Our project manager is not here. He must have gotten hung up. I did ask him to attend today, and he must be out in a meeting or another project and unable to attend. He would be more suitable for being able to answer that question.
Okay, well, I'm just curious, because you basically got the bid going out and coming back complete in less than 30 days, or right around that.
It's about 30 days. There is a requirement for public service projects. I do know that. There is a minimum bidding time that it does have to be out to the public, and we would be respecting that bidding period.
Okay, and then construction start time is based upon a lot of factors coming up. You know, will the bids get back? Will the package get out in time to get them all back, in time to do the evaluation, and in time to get it to council for approval in April? So there's a lot of inch planning between.
There is a lot of steps to go to make sure that we're still on target. But again, this process has gone fairly well, that we do anticipate staying on that timeline.
Okay, does it make any sense, since you'll have numbers tomorrow, pretty good, an estimate of what it's going to be, that you're going to work on the high points to try to value engineer them down? When would it make sense for us to have another workshop?
I would say we're probably looking in, I would say more late January to early February timeframe. That would be probably the best. Because then at that point, you will also have the relocation of library services, so where everybody's going to be going to. And then we will have a much better idea of what our plan is moving forward.
Okay, so before we've talked about on relocation that we were going to have some of it in the Pioneer Room area. Is that still the case, that plus this another location?
I think we're still looking at that plan as a whole, and rather than give you something that we may or may not be doing, I think it would be best to unveil that all at the same time.
Okay, so you might be able to put it all in one place. Okay.
I don't have any questions, but thank you so much for all the work that you've been invested in keeping us updated.
Absolutely.
Just a couple questions. So that was my question too. When should we hold our next workshop? Because it'd be great to get that scheduled. So I would like to propose, based on your recommendation, that we just shoot for early February and go ahead and schedule that now to give everyone plenty of time. So I'll work on that with Reno and the rest of the boards. So early February, we'll do another workshop. And hi, Francis. And also, what about timeline of communication? Has that been discussed?
Our communications team is out for the holiday season, at least half of them. There's two.
Oh.
We are anticipating that communication to start probably sometime in mid-January. The reason for that time frame is because, again, we want to make sure that we have a definitive relocation strategy before we start announcing that the library is going to be closing. So we don't want everybody to kind of run around their chicken with their heads cut off and go, oh my gosh, what's going on, and contacting you, contacting our city council. We want to say the library's closing for a period of time. You're going to have amazing services are going to be able to continue at this location. And we are investigating locations that stay relatively central to your current site.
Okay. And you said that you had a couple of meetings, I think next week, to talk about locations. Is Reno included in those meetings? And no? And wondering if he gets a choice and a say, and that you guys are checking in with his, what would work for the Dallas.
That's correct. I've been in regular communication with Reno. Part of the reason why he's not been included in those conversations is because some of those conversations are necessary only for certain individuals with the city to be in attendance.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay, thank you. So just to catch you up, Francis, we're looking at the timeline. Robert just gave us an update. Everything looks on track right now. There may be greater purchasing agreements that we could take advantage of, which will free up some money, and they're still looking at locations. Did you have any questions on the renovation project?
I don't. Thank you for catching me up, though.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, which is policy review and update collection development.
All right. Ooh, that's loud. Okay. So, I still think this is louder than normal. Okay. Can you, is there like a,
They were messing with it last night because somebody couldn't be heard, so I think Zach might have really jacked it up.
let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1, 1, 1. There we go. I think I can scooch back a little bit. Yeah, okay. So this collection development policy update is essentially to align us with a recent state law, the California Freedom to Read Act, 1825. So this law kind of establishes what the state views as the expectations for all public libraries that receive state funding, that we have to be in alignment with how they want us to set up and frame our collection development plan. Our collection development plan was already very robust and very strong. The changes we're going to see here outlined tonight are essentially just putting in the exact verbiage that the state library has decided is needed to align with the state law. And so with that, the state library sent out a checklist to all the public libraries, and that is what you saw attached to this policy update, and essentially just delineated, I think it was like 4 or 5 lines of text that they're going to be looking for specifically in every collection development policy in the state that wants to receive funding through the state library, and that's essentially most libraries. For context, we currently receive state funding for our literacy program, so that's around $200,000 a year, and then we also receive funding such as the Play for All grant that was also managed through the state library, and there's always future grant opportunities through the state, and so we do want to stay in alignment with what the state library is expecting of libraries, and that is the main goal for this. While it won't cost us anything by not changing, like it's not going to cost anything to implement this change, if we don't implement it, then we could see some down the road impact in that we might not be eligible for future funding from the state library, which is why we want to be in alignment with this new law. Let me skip forward. This is the collection development policy change in red. This is the current one, and I'm just going to go down to the checklist. I should have added, here we go. So these are the items that we added to the collection development policy. It's really these 4 checkboxes here, and we're adding the verbiage just listed, and that has been added. Sorry for the shift here, and that's really where we added them here. And most of these were in alignment with the purpose and scope of the collection development policy. You can see there where I've inserted the wording from the state library. I tried not to edit or change what you as the board had already approved, but instead just add to it in the areas that made the most sense. There were some minor edits later on, just because we had to make it align with the tense. And other than that, there hasn't been any major changes to the collection policy. Do you have any questions, or would you like to go line by line? Any thoughts about the changes that we are proposing?
I had something in here that I saw earlier, and I'm looking for it again.
was looking at that. Reno, did you have any, like when you read the requirements, was anything of concern to you, or did you feel completely comfortable adding?
I was perfectly comfortable with adding these changes. The reality is that most of these are either reinforcing or rewording what we already had in our collection development policy.
Yeah, but it's probably worded so that they'll catch it because it's more their wording.
Correct.
Yeah, I understand. I didn't see anything but platitudes and that type of stuff in here. It's not, but there was something that, okay, here it is. Okay, it's right in front of me. Okay, this is page 9, purpose and scope. Okay, and this is just, I guess this is just nitpicky. The collection meets the broad and diverse interests of the community and respects both the library's autonomy and their specific community needs. Okay, you're talking about the community's specific needs or the library's?
That is a great question. That line is verbatim what the state library has as a requirement to include. We can write to the state librarian for clarification, but that is functionally where the language that they requested that we include in the collection policy.
Well, since it's their wording, I have no more questions.
I think for me, the thought for that one, I think it's supposed to be the library's autonomy, and I think there is referencing the community, I believe. The library's community is how I would understand that clause to be read.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time on this, what, a year ago? And I didn't see any changes that were anything other than just, you know, like, gosh, isn't it a nice day? It's just nothing substantive.
I don't have any concerns.
Yeah, no concerns or questions here. It seems fairly straightforward.
So do we need to move to approve this, or?
Yes. Anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to approve the update to the collection development policy.
Second.
I'm going to open the voting.
Okay, approve 4-0. Thank you, Rena.
Just a quick question on that too, like what's the next step now? Do you reach back out?
Yes, so the next step is, what we do is submit our collection policies to the state library, and they'll review it and then give us the okay, and then we'll be set. And then I believe, I'll have to double check, but I think there's a period of, I think it's once a year or whenever we have a major change, we resubmit so that way we can stay eligible for grant funding for that next fiscal year.
Just had a thought on the deselecting library materials, the weeding process.
Yes.
Virginia and I went through an extensive, well, I thought it was extensive, about an hour or more with Aspen Hill on how weeding was done. And, but Maribel and Francis haven't had the opportunity to hear about it, that level of detail, and I wondered if anybody thought that would be worthwhile to do.
I thought you did.
I had met with Reno one-on-one, and he kind of went over the process.
Okay.
Did you, Francis?
I don't recall at the moment. I have met with Reno, though.
Okay, well, Virginia had a heck of a good write-up on the meeting we had with Aspen. Do you still have that? You know, I wouldn't mind having a copy of that just for my notes, but that'd be something I think the two of you guys might be interested in.
Yeah,
seeing.
that's however you need to get it to us.
Okay, I'll just have Reno double check it first, because it was pre-Reno's time, so I don't know if any processes have changed. And then once you give me the feedback that it still looks relevant, then I'll send it individually to Maribel and Francis.
Yep, that works for me. I'm happy to look it over.
Okay. Happy to share. And next item is the statistics report.
All right. I have no major news to report here. Are there any questions? I'm still, by the way, working with the city's communications and IT department to set up more accurate website data for us. Where we finally made a good step forward, and I think by next meeting we should have better, more accurate information regarding how many visits are actually happening on our website.
The 5,000 is an estimate?
That is an estimate based on past traffic to the website, because
Okay.
we have to put something in for our monthly reports.
Okay.
But I suspect it's actually higher than 5,000, but we're just waiting. There's just a lot of missing data from the types of reports I've been receiving. So we're trying to get actually specific to our main page and then sub-pages, because not everybody goes directly to the main page. Sometimes they'll go to bookmarked pages, and we're trying to capture that traffic.
For the e-material in the past, we talked about the hoopla and the other things connected to reducing costs there. Has there been any change in sentiment since last month or previous months?
I will have a bit more of a discussion in my director's report. The reality is yes. We've noticed some, and we have some recommendations and some questions for you once we get to the next section.
I have no questions on the statistics report. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. We can move to the next item.
Next one is our strategic planning goal. Again, there is not many updates here. These are for strategic goal number 4, which is make the best use of resources by operating efficiently and will be a good neighbor and community member. So these are a lot of strategic goals related to wellness and the environment and efficiency in general. Some of these, for example, we've continued to do. For example, we continue to have our materials that are weeded be recycled or resold by our friends. We also work with the city's departments for recycling. And we continue to have our succulent swap and similar programs like our Healthy Use series, our meditation, and we're constantly looking for new and diverse types of programs that align for all ages across health and wellness for our patrons. A recent program that I thought was very novel was the Sustainable Fashion Program. That was from an outside presenter. And in our story times, the fact that we're adding more play elements is kind of focusing on that strategic goal of keeping kids not on screen time, but having more imaginative play, and making those areas in the library somewhere where they can feel safe and have a good time while not on a tablet or a computer.
Just a question on the adult service staff plan to reach senior centers and assisted living facilities in 2025. Doesn't the Friends of the Library already send books to senior centers? And would that be captured under the strategic plan, or is that separate because it's their initiative?
It would be a partnered initiative. It's not directly part of our efforts. We help facilitate, of course, and we connect them if we hear from a new assisted living or retirement home that they might be in need of closer to the library. Then we connect them with our friends. So we do have a part, but we're not directly. This component is more actually having our staff go out and do, say, for example, basic computer classes, or maybe some sort of literacy component or social type programs, craft programs, to go out and kind of train, for example, if we wanted to show seniors how to use our ebooks or audiobooks, that would be one type of program where we might go out and demonstrate or give them the example of using a tablet or on their phones or what have you. Those are more the types of programs we're looking to engage in through our adult services team.
Okay, and I'm sorry, this might not be a question for you, but maybe the city staff, do we have a senior center in Escondido? And do you partner with a senior center or plan to, not just senior assisted living facilities?
We do have, from what I understand, a senior center. Other than on the occasional use, we don't have a direct kind of solid, like, named program, for example, for what we do there. But it's definitely something that's on my radar and something that we would consider.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on this section? No? Okay, thank you, Rena. I think we're moving on to the library director's report.
All right, so we're going to start off with the question and kind of the update on Hoopla, as Francis alluded to earlier. So just to refresh everybody's memory, we in the past limited the Hoopla downloads down from 5 to 3 per month, and we instituted a budgetary cap per month, which then also results in a budgetary cap per day. Now, the issue we're running into is that the budget cap that is daily is as a result of the fact that it's around $1,300 a month, and then that gets chopped down to 30. So let's just say it's $50 a day, just for ease of math. When most of the downloads cost between $2 and $4, that means that we get around 20 to 40 downloads per day. What we've noticed is that the service continues to be popular, but it's popular in the way that at midnight, when everything resets, the downloads are done and capped within the hour. So between 12 and 1 a.m., that's it. If you didn't get your book during that time, you're not going to get it until you try again the next night. This, of course, is frustrating to those that are using Hoopla. We are aware of that, and so we have a number of options we can take to further make Hoopla something that's fair and allowing access to our patrons. So we can limit by a number of different factors. So the most extreme, but probably the most effective, would be to hide all the audiobooks from Hoopla. Audiobooks make up around 60% of the total checkouts on Hoopla, and so if we were to hide them, the rest of the formats would be able to be checked out in a more reasonable fashion. The negative to that, of course, is that the audiobooks are the most popular, and so we're obviously going to displease a lot of people that are finding their audiobooks on Hoopla. We can also limit by the cost of the download. Most downloads right now are in the sub $3, so it's between $2 and $3 per download. There's probably around 10 to 15% that are above $3, but it's not a majority. So that would have an impact, but not a significant one. We can also look into being more strict about who can access Hoopla. Right now, we're allowing anybody with our online library card and our physical library card without any regard to whether they live in Escondido or if they're, got our online card but are actually in San Diego, or if they're somewhere else. So we can also limit it by library card or zip code. So we have a number of different options, some more extreme and some that are a little bit more kind of incremental steps to see where we fit best. For me, my question to you would be, what do you think would be a fair approach? How would you like us to move forward as far as how we keep Hoopla going in a way that's fair and equitable and isn't as frustrating for the users?
I have a question. Audiobooks on Hoopla, are the same audiobooks available on Libby?
Yes and no. There are some differences between the catalogs. Most of what we're doing is finding that the audiobooks are found, especially the popular ones, are on Overdrive Libby. And I've been tasking the staff to be more proactive in managing Overdrive in a way that better mirrors Hoopla. So for example, on Overdrive Libby, some titles allow us to do essentially what Hoopla does, which is cost per download. And we can enable that with a set budget for a set book. So for example, if there's a hot new New York Times bestseller, we can say, okay, we have 10 holds right now. If we allocate $100, we'll clear all those holds and we'll still have a surplus. So that's what we're doing right now to make Overdrive a better service and to more closely mimic Hoopla's experience. There are going to be some titles that are only available on Hoopla, just like there are some titles that are only available on Overdrive Libby. It has to do with how the publishers negotiate with the two service providers, and we don't really have control over that.
So is there a way to direct potential users of Hoopla to make their audiobook search first on Overdrive?
We can certainly do that. We can force it by hiding all the audiobooks on Hoopla. That would be one method. The other method, which we've been trying at the staff level, is to remind people when they come and let us know that they're frustrated with Hoopla's experience, that they should also try Overdrive as an alternative. There is a third option called the Palace Project. It's Palace app, and that one has more audiobooks as well, and those are being funded by the state library. Currently, we don't have it on the website. We're looking into adding it to the website. The negative to the Palace app is that it does not have a web-based catalog like Overdrive and Libby do. You have to only install it through an app. So it's a little bit more limiting than Overdrive and Hoopla, but it does offer some more options for people that are looking for those audiobooks.
Yeah, as a general rule, how much cheaper is an audiobook for us on Overdrive versus Hoopla?
It really depends. There's 3 different service models available through Overdrive. The most cost-effective mirrors the way we buy books in the library, which is 1 copy, 1 user. We buy a book, an audiobook, usually for around between $50 to $80, which again is much more than if you were to buy an audiobook yourself. But once we have that copy in our Overdrive catalog, we keep it as long as we have Overdrive. But it mirrors the checkout process of 1 user, 1 copy. There is another model that's metered access where we pay essentially the same thing, but it's at a discount. And so instead of paying $80, we might pay $30, but after 12 months, we have to pay it again if we want to keep that title in the collection. And the last model is the one that's very much like Hoopla, where it's for every download, you're paying a certain amount of cost, and that cost is very much about the same as you would pay in Hoopla. It's, $5, sometimes up to $10, depending on the title.
I don't mean to backtrack, but going back to the checkout process, is there not a queue in Hoopla to where, it could just get the next person up, or is it, I guess what I'm trying to get at is what is the behavior of the patrons? Is it everyone's signing in at midnight?
Yes.
It is? Okay.
Yes, they know essentially what you get is a notification saying your book is ready. If you have your hold, right, you'll get a message saying, go in and download it. You have to download it at this point at midnight and kind of do a little roulette to see whether you get it or not. And kind of, if you were bidding on eBay back in those days, you're kind of refreshing to see if you can get that download. And that's what's happening right now. Like I mentioned, there's a couple ways we can try to limit it. I've asked Hoopla to give us some more data based on the last few months of checkouts, so we can better analyze what type of cost books, what formats, if it's changed at all, so that way we can do a more informed approach and say, okay, we can try lowering the cost to check out, or we can try filtering out by formats. But there's not much else beyond that we can do other than try to remind people that Overdrive's an option, and then right now investigating the Palace project as an alternative for audiobooks.
Okay. That's interesting. And poor customer experience as well, if you think of it in that sense. But is there a lot of overlap between the audiobooks on Hoopla and Overdrive Libby, or is there a way to quickly identify like the overlap that might exist with the audiobooks? I guess my concern would be removing the audiobooks doesn't seem like the best for the library's base. But potentially, maybe if you're moving an audiobook because it's available on Overdrive Libby, that might make sense.
The main strength of Hoopla was the fact that it was basically on demand. If you wanted a book, you could get the book. At this point, that's not really the case anymore. So we have to evaluate, if we have to remove the audiobooks, we have to hide them, then at least people will have access to like the comic books, the ebooks, the other titles that are only available on Hoopla that aren't on Overdrive. So for example, Overdrive doesn't have the same range of comic books that Hoopla does. And there are, some more options. Now, catalogs themselves, when it comes to audiobooks, while there might be some differences, and that comes down to the publishers that have made those ties with either Hoopla or Overdrive, for the most part, if it's a very popular like New York Times bestseller, it's going to be on both. And in the past, the difference was that in Overdrive, you might have to be on the wait list for a while, and in Hoopla, you didn't. That was the main difference. Other than that, the catalogs themselves aren't too different. But like I said, Hoopla has some formats that Overdrive does not. And so we're trying to balance out the approach of, okay, if Hoopla is now going to be our not audiobook, but it's going to be our ebook and comic book and maybe some of those streaming movies, then we can at least allow people to get those formats on Hoopla, and we can try to funnel those people towards Overdrive and potentially the Palace Project for the audiobooks.
And then what's the general policy or procedures when there's users that are not based in Escondido? You mentioned before about the zip code stuff. Is it pretty common to like go through and audit that list of users to make sure they are local?
Currently, we do not have that as a policy or a procedure. Okay. I think in California, anybody can get a library card anywhere. And generally, for example, for Overdrive, we're part of a consortium. It's the Sarah Cooperative. But we do buy things that are specific just for Escondido. And so those are limited by our Escondido library card numbers. And so if you don't log into Overdrive, you'll see one collection, but if you log in with your library card, you'll see a different collection where we've bought more items for our patrons to be able to access.
So I have a clarification question. So when you say hide, is that saying that audiobooks will not be accessible, or is that they're still there, they just have to dig for them?
No, they will not see them. They'll be as if they do not exist on Hoopla.
Okay. And I know you're waiting to hear back from Hoopla on some more data. Is it possible to put an annual cap per user, right? So that Virginia can only do 2 checkouts, 5 checkouts per total year, right? And hopefully that can help balance out. So that way we're not having the same people logging in at 12:01 and taking most of our budget.
That is an interesting question. I do not know, but we can certainly ask about that. There might be some technical limitations as far as how they can limit that. It's much easier to filter than it is to actively monitor and stop. But it could be doable, but I just don't know for sure.
If the audiobooks are blocked, hidden, whatever you want to call it, you don't know if that audiobook is available on Hoopla, and you go to Libby, Overdrive, and it's not there. So you could assume that it might be on the other platform. So I can't see is there a way that if somebody says, hey, I can't find what the audiobook that I want, can you help them, or is that just too too burdensome to have that type of activity.
No, we certainly help patrons find content, both just like in the regular print collections, we help them find it on Hoopla or Overdrive. And there is the option for suggesting purchases, both in Overdrive and in Hoopla. Mostly in Overdrive, it's a little bit easier. So we could do that as well. And so, for example, there are, in Overdrive, like I mentioned, there are some titles that we bought for a limited amount of time, and then they get automatically weeded from the digital collection. So for example, if somebody said, oh, I was looking for this title, our staff can go in and look and say, oh, it is available on Overdrive, and then we can decide, okay, it might be a discounted cost because it is an older title, or it might be a brand new one, but we can make that decision, and we do have those discretionary funds where we can just buy that for that patron, and then we'll have it for either, if it's one use, we can do a single metered use for it, or buy it to get it back into the collection. So there's options for re-adding or helping people find books that aren't currently there.
Okay, and if you did block Hoopla and they had to go to Overdrive and couldn't find the book, so you wouldn't anticipate a huge amount of people doing that,
I would anticipate about the same number of people calling in and complaining about the fact that Hoopla is capped, as I would say those same people would be the ones messaging us and calling about finding a book on Overdrive. And it's not a zero number, but it's definitely not an outrageous number where our staff are overwhelmed. It's something that we can certainly manage.
okay, good to know.
Well, okay, I'll let everyone else talk, but this is a personal experience for me, and part of my, feedback from the library's use, because I exclusively listen to audiobooks. And since the change in Hoopla, I can't use Hoopla anymore. There's just no way. I totally lost out on that. And I will not get up at midnight to check out a book. Libby doesn't have anything that I'm interested in, so I end up giving up. Like, I know they have a lot of good books, but like if there's a book that I want to listen to and I'll research it, not there. Oh, let me try this other book I was thinking about, not there. Hoopla would have been like, it would have been there. I mean, usually in the past when I used Hoopla, what I looked for was usually there unless it's a brand new book. So I liked Hoopla more. It felt more accessible and relevant to what I was looking for personally. So that was my personal experience. So what I am seeing that's happening is the community, actually I'm on this Facebook group called Moms of Escondido, and there are many comments on the Hoopla change. And there are a lot of moms that are frustrated about having the same experience that I went through, but they're talking about using other services. So we're directing a lot of people away from our library use by this change. And that's, something that's important to all of us, is having these things accessible to the community. So I've given up, like I don't listen to audiobooks through our own library anymore. I go directly to Apple or Amazon or any other online platform because it's just easier in my busy workday to not have to be frustrated by finding titles that I can't find. So I would like to know like what the long-term plan is for this. Obviously Hoopla is important to our community. Having more titles accessible on audiobooks, we do have a community that listens to audiobooks, especially busy moms that are driving their kids around to school and things like that. So do we need to talk about finding more budget? Do we need to talk about other platforms that have more? Like what is the bigger solution that we could come up with?
You hit the main point, which would be a solution would be more budget. One of the reasons we made this change is because the budget was not sustainable. The last month before we made the switch, the costs were upwards of $5,000 a month for Hoopla alone, and it was trending up. So within a year, we could have gone up into like the $6,000–$7,000 a month. And that, of course, that reflected the fact that we were having more users, more downloads, etc. But as we're all aware, the collection budget has not changed. So if we're allocating $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 just for Hoopla, we would need that as an add-on or a separate budget for the e-collections or something. There's just no way within our current budgets that we would be able to absorb that without having to trade off somewhere. And so we would have this conversation about overdrive, or we might be having this conversation about our Spanish language collection or our children's books. There's, as we all know, the budget is, we're balancing it out and redistributing, but it is not increasing. We, of course, have the opportunity to recommend changes to that, and of course, Robert's here and the council hears these, but that is one solution. The other solution is, as I've proposed, is limiting how people access Hoopla and trying to reinforce the other tools we have, which right now are Libby Overdrive and potentially the Palace Project.
I think one of the ideas that Reno threw out there is regards into, based on the situation that we're in, putting some limits in. And I know you threw out maybe a zip code, right, where it's only Escondido residents. My question for that is, based on the funding that is going into Hoopla, are there any restrictions that would prevent us from doing that?
As far as
The funding the money that's coming to pay for Hoopla.
the Hoopla funding is coming out of our collections budget, which is from the city's development funds. So it's $250,000, and from that we subdivide it into our physical collection and our digital collection. And within digital, I believe Hoopla is currently slated at $1,300 a month, and I think we ended up being like 15 grand, something like that, for the year. I'm happy to provide you more details about like how digital breaks down, but we have been trying to eliminate underused digital resources, what we sometimes call databases, to try to funnel more funding both to Overdrive and Hoopla. But again, at some point we will run out of databases that aren't used, and we'll have some that are still being used, and so we can't get rid of those. And so those are kind of the options where we're at right now.
Yeah,
as far as funding.
So the money's coming from the city.
Correct.
So then from the cities, and is there anything from the city that is saying that this money has to go towards a collection, right, kind of going down, that has to be, I guess, would the city have any issues if we just restricted it to Escondido residents having access to Hoopla? Or is there anything that says that this needs to be open to San Diego County, the state of California, anybody that has an online library card?
I will have to double check. I know that there is laws that make it so that anybody in California can get a library card anywhere. However, as far as who and what can be checked out, that is defined by the policies set by the Board of Trustees, which is why I had to come to you to ask to reduce how many things can be checked out from Hoopla. So it is within the realm of your rulemaking and policy making to tell us this is how we want to check out on Hoopla, because functionally it's the same as physical checkouts. It's setting the standard of what and how and who can check out materials from our collections.
So how difficult would it be to figure out if there's, how much outside the Escondido zip code is now using Hoopla?
I don't think it'll be too difficult, but I have to confirm with the Hoopla representative. They should have all that data when they check out, because it's tied to that library card number. And so we can cross-reference our data set if they don't have it with theirs, and I can just link it up by library card number and then check the zips, and it's not too difficult.
I think it would be a good idea just to have the numbers so we know if it's meaningful and something that we can address, or it's doesn't amount to much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree, we need to confirm that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's anything we can do temporarily.
Well, is it possible that the people that are having difficulty getting something on Hoopla because they don't feel like getting up at midnight, or can have some path by calling the library, emailing, whatever, to go ahead and get the book released to them through Hoopla and actually see how much that it actually would cost us to address the people that are being negatively affected.
I am not sure if there is a mechanism that I'm aware of where we can manually override and release items that patrons have selected, but I can ask Hoopla about it. I, from my admin portal side of things, have not seen a button that would give me the idea that that's doable, but it might be.
Are these the largest platforms?
Yes, there is only one other platform that is also in the market, which is called Cloud Library by Biblioteca. It works very similar to Hoopla in that it's just simultaneous users downloading. For a while, the library did subscribe to Cloud Library. It was, I think, 1 or 2 years before I arrived. From my understanding, the usage wasn't good enough to keep for the cost, but it is a solution. It is an alternative provider. So it's really just Overdrive Libby, Hoopla, and Cloud Library are the main three, with the Palace project being kind of a more nonprofit open source alternative that's supposed to act as a clearinghouse. So the goal of Palace is supposed to let you connect your Hooplas, your Clouds, all in one, so that patrons only have to check in one app rather than the various different apps that exist.
And is there a cost for Palace?
We currently, the state of California here is currently maintaining that cost for whoever library that wants to join up. But it's substantially less if for whatever reason the state drops it. Mm-hmm. It's typically less costly than some of these other platforms because the goal is for it to not be the same type of for-profit as the other three.
Sorry, there's a lot of questions here today. It says here the staff has suggested limiting Hoopla by format and or cost per item. Is there a solution within cost per item, or what is the staff suggesting there?
We can. As I mentioned, we can see what basically Hoopla breaks it down into different cost categories or buckets, where the majority of the items that are checked out are in the $2 to $3 range. And there is a small percentage that goes beyond that, that's the 3 to 4 and above. But like I said, that might make up maybe 10 to 15 max of the total downloads. So we would be able to save a percentage to add some more downloads in that middle chunk, but it's not going to impact the same way as, say, removing audiobooks, because that is 60% plus of the downloads.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? Is there a way, I'm so afraid to ask this, is there a way to pass that cost on to the person that wants to check it out? Because I would happily pay $3 for a download than having to pay $30 for the audiobook.
I believe there's no real way of doing that, especially since it goes counter to like the model of what the library is doing. It'd be similar to us renting out the books, and so none of the systems are set up to do that, since libraries tend to be averse to charging for anything.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we got away from renting books on CD 5 years ago, so, yeah.
I guess, like, what do we see as the next steps here?
I'm thinking there might be a short-term and a long-term solution to this. Long-term, does it make sense to look at, was it Cloud, to see what they offer, if it's better than Libby, or?
We can certainly reach out to the cloud vendor again and see what the prices are and what the catalogs, how they compare. I'm also in talks to kind of work with staff to analyze the Palace project to see where it's at. The reason we haven't really promoted it recently, or it's not on the website, is for a long time it was kind of a work in progress. It wasn't really a fully viable and fleshed out app in the way that Libby and Hoopla were. But there's been a lot of investment and improvements since the last time I looked at it, which was a few years ago. So it could be worthwhile to see whether it's improved enough that we want to have patrons look at it as an alternative to those audiobook choices that they're not finding currently.
So that could be part of a long-term research, a couple of months. I don't know, how long do you think, realistically, how long would it take to take a look at those two options?
It normally wouldn't take too long. It's just, I would say a month or two max. Right now, because of the holiday season,
Yeah.
that's why I haven't heard back from the Hoopla reps, is my suspicion. But I think it would be a great project to look over the next couple months, probably leading up to our closure, where we might want to reconsider or discuss how much, depending on where we end up, how much goes into the physical collection versus the digital collection, depending on if we have a smaller space or the same space for the collections. From you, the main question would be, what do we think, what do you want to know more about the impact of cutting by format, by cost, by location? Where do we feel the priorities should be as we do the research?
So I think my asks would be that to come back with more data after you talk with Hoopla regarding zip code use, and if there's data regarding data by users, to explore maybe a user cap, an annual user cap.
I would go off of that location. Seems like it's a great place to start. And a last resort, in my opinion, would be taking away the most popular format. That's
Well, it looks like, if listening to Virginia's experience, and I guess other people's having the same experience, that by putting the cap, you've already removed a lot of audiobooks from Hoopla. That's an unintended consequence, but that seems to be what happened. So those are the people that are complaining, I would assume, mostly. What can we do short-term without blowing the budget to help them?
The short term, I know Hoopla told us that it'd be really easy for us to limit by cost. So that would be that 10 to 15%. So that'd be the most expensive items. And a lot of that could relieve some pressure, but again, it's really just a Band-Aid. We're not really stopping the flow of damage. If the result is like what happened with Virginia, it might be something to consider that we might have to just remove the audiobook so that way at least people can get something without having to wait or wake up at midnight to check things out. But that's really, I defer to your guidance as far as what you think seems the most fair, or if you want to get a little bit more data and see what we can do first.
I personally think we obviously need more data, but there's got to be something we can do short-term, like before the next, now, so to speak, we apparently have got some number of people who are just basically shut out just by their lifestyle from ever being able to find books on Hoopla again. And we haven't even shut off the audiobooks.
I think based off of what Reno has said and John, what you're expressing, it sounds like temporarily until we can get more information, we would just have a item or category cap. So instead of having the 10 to 20 checkouts, we may be able to get 25 to 30. I mean, I don't think it does much. It's a really small Band-Aid, but it could, for right now, increase until hopefully next month we have a bit more information.
There is the other option, which would be, I don't necessarily recommend it, but we could pump up the budget so we can steal from later in the fiscal year and move those funds now. That would appease the people currently, but it's not really, I don't really want to encourage a yo-yoing effect of now you get books, now you don't, because I don't think that's really setting the precedent we would want for the public.
Well, I think I'd want to see, so that we could meet the community's needs but not blow our budget. We're learning that what we're doing now is not working, but what is a reasonable solution that we could come to without completely blowing the budget, but how much money do we need to find?
Mhm. And one thing I'll mention is that we can see a list of what books are being blocked. So when people try to download something and they get that message,
Yeah.
we have a list of that.
Okay.
So it would at least let us see the types, and if it's all audiobooks,
Yeah.
or what types of audiobooks, that could inform what we might want to buy or reinforce an overdrive, for example. So that way, like what your case is maybe we just have a lack of a certain type of collection item in overdrive, and we just need to buy a bunch of those.
Okay, I'll go online and request them all so you can see what I'm missing. Yeah, that sounds good.
Is there a way to limit a Hoopla customer to one audiobook checkout at a time?
We could do that. We can lower the limit from 3 down to 1. I don't know about limiting it as one download at a single time. It's, from my understanding, it's set up for like a monthly quota, but I can also ask whether there's some other mechanism where there's a cap for how many at a time somebody can check out. I'm not aware of it, but we can certainly ask.
Okay. Yeah, because I don't use Hoopla at all. I don't even, I use Libby. And I usually download 2 or 3 books at a time because it's free. And they're always, well, not always there. There's some that are taken out, but yeah, so and I'm obviously not listening to 3 books at a time. I just want to have another one ready in case I finish one going down the road. I don't have to pull over and, okay.
All right, so I'm hearing we're focusing on users, maybe user limits, and then also zip codes, so location. So again, it's kind of limiting the population that it has access. It's more user focused rather than format focused at this point. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm really focusing on how can we help the people that are having difficulty now. You know, are there hundreds of them? Is it just 10 or 12? You know what?
I can say for sure that we went from almost 1,000 Hoopla users per month down to around 300.
Mm-hmm.
On Libby, it's going to be cheaper.
Yeah, and I'll mention that the overdrive users have continued to grow. So that has remained steady. Any other questions or any comments? Anything else you would need from me for our next meeting regarding this topic?
No, just if you could, I would like to find more funds, if we can, to focus on for this. So if you could have a suggestion for that too.
Okay, for sure. Now for more fun updates. The Play for All grant is ready to almost be installed. We're just waiting for one last shipment of our mobile bookshelves, and those are set to arrive tomorrow. And so we're planning an installation sometime late next week. Fridays we're going to remove, or hopefully we're going to remove the shelving once we line up with the city's team to help us with that. And then we're going to start installation over that weekend. And it's almost going to be like a Christmas present for the community. We'll have that open and running hopefully before Christmas, really, even though we'll be closed on Christmas Day. But we'll then have a few months before we temporarily close. But we'll have that as a nice kind of mini grand opening in January is where we're expecting to have a nice little festivity to kind of celebrate the Play for All grant and the installation, and to recognize how it's going to fold into the rest of our play elements of our programming. So we're really excited for that. Brief staff updates. We had a couple new staff join us, and we're currently looking for a staff member for supporting our Pioneer Room. So if you know anybody that's really interested in local history, has a history background or archives, we're currently looking for somebody great for somebody in college right now that's going for history or archaeology, anything like that, anthropology. great candidates for this position. And I'm very quickly going to go through the highlights. I was very happy to see the Native American dance and cultural celebration, the photos and the event, all of that was great, and along with our Native American basket weaving program. Very successful, and I love seeing more representation from our Native and Indigenous communities at the library, and I think it's going to be a great tie-in eventually once we have that mural up on the exterior. Youth services, again, wonderful cultural celebrations in November and at the end of October. Dia de los Muertos, we had almost 100 attendees for our children's program. You can see there the dance. And great feedback from our ofrenda, the altar at the entryway of the library. 180 community members left messages there. And I think there was a Pioneer Room. Oh, yes, the Pioneer Room got chopped off here. A couple new collections to the Pioneer Room's digital collections. And they're currently in the middle of also writing a grant to help support the oral history project that I had mentioned in past meetings. And those are my updates for this session.
Thank you. Any questions? I love all the community events that have happened just recently. Thanks, Reno.
Yeah, thank you. And I know the hoopla stuff is tough to talk about in certain ways, but appreciate your thoughtfulness there. And the events are always great to see.
This whole thing on budget has been slowly coming upon us for years. You can't have the same amount of money that we had 7 years ago and expect to have the same results. With just nominal 2.5%, 3% inflation, we're way behind already. So.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the board report of library uses, and I have shared enough on mine. Maribel, do you want to go?
Yeah. So these last couple weeks, I've been going to the Pioneer Room because I saw that you guys have the drop-in genealogy event. And I think the first time I saw it posted, I wasn't able to make it. And I went in not expecting to find much because my family came from Mexico. A lot of them, are illiterate, and so just name misspellings and all that. So I really went in not expecting anything. But the staff there helped me out, and I think within like 20 minutes, we started finding information on my maternal great-grandparents. And so we have been kind of going back and tracing that lineage. And so we've gotten back to my great-great-great-grandparents. And I've discovered that one of my mom's maiden last names, I'm not sure where it came from. It just randomly appeared because her father, my great-grandfather, switched his last name. So what we thought was Ayala is actually Pio Quinto. We've never heard that last name. So now the library staff are trying to help me figure out why that came about. So it's pretty exciting. I got really emotional because I didn't expect to find anything. And so that came about my sophomore year of high school. My AP European teacher had us do a genealogy where it's like, talk to your parents, just get down basic information. And I've been saving that project for 15 years. So it's really exciting to be able to do that at the library.
I just take out my normal 2 or 3 books a month, and I got to figure out a way to stop picking out a book. I said, oh, I haven't read this one, but yet I have.
Yeah, I don't have many stories about the library building or inside of it, but I do a lot of walking around the neighborhood since I live in Old Escondido, and I was walking down Calmia one day and I noticed a ranger walking around and just wanted to publicly say thank you for all that the rangers do. I know that they're intertwined with a lot of the library building stuff, and just to see them, their presence, I think makes a difference. So thank you to the library rangers, or whatever their official title is.
I'll pass that on. I'm sure they'll like that.
We can adjourn. Thank you so much.
May I make a comment? Because I think maybe would be helpful. I live in this county. My address is still Escondido. I have a library card. I'm not sure if it's still valid. It may be expired. But I don't think that the city boundaries and the zip codes are work. You know, if you can have the same zip code, and part of it will be county, and part of it will be city. So,
I think once we look at that, I'm sure we can take that into account and make sure that we, even though there might be some overlap, we can find a way that will include those that are in Escondido but not officially in that zip code.
so if that's what you want, that's great. But if you're trying to do it the other way and get rid of it, I think you have a problem doing it.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that they're basically residents of the city. I'm one of them. That the city is right across the street from me. We live in the quote plan area, and the zip codes are city zip codes. So I think we'd be looking at zip codes that are Rancho Bernardo, Fallbrook, Vista, etc., and not the 9202, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that's Escondido. Yeah.
And I'll mention just in general that as long as the field in our records has city, like has Escondido, we can use that as a filter instead of the zip code. So we have some flexibility in that. Now, if that record says San Diego, then that's a different story. But we have some flexibility. All right. Thank you. Comment. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.